Hello, welcome to the Society of Fantasy Fanatics podcast. I'm so excited to be here. We're two BFFs. That is me and my co-host Ailsa. My name is KJ Aiello. That is Ailsa Bristow. We deep dive into the lore, romance, theories, and so much more about your favorite fantasy reads and our favorite fantasy reads. So what is our favorite will become your favorite. I'm just saying. Today, we're going to go deep dive into Iris, Winnow, and Roman Kit's world in Divine Rivals. Before we get into today's episode, we'd love if you hit the like, subscribe, ring the bell, leave a comment, all that loving good stuff. We're also on Instagram at handle SFF _ podcast. There we
Can you
go.
tell it's new?
It is. We are brand new.
Yeah, let's start off with a summary recap overview of what Divine Rivals is. So Divine Rivals, oh yeah.
Yay!
is the first in Rebecca Ross's Letters of Enchantment duology, following the dual point of view of Iris E. Winnow and Roman C. Kit. Those middle initials are important, by the way. Very important. From the beginning, the reader is transported into a World War I-esque world where two of the Divines are at war. In Divine Rivals, this starts as simply a backdrop to really flesh out Iris and Roman and what will become their romance. So, who are our plucky main characters? Iris is a 19-year-old up-and-coming reporter for the prestigious Oath Gazette, and she is pitted against her arch-nemesis and rival, 20-year-old Roman, and both of them are trying to get a coveted columnist role at the Oath Gazette. Now, it's pretty obvious, pretty much right from the start, that the tension between these two is thick and hot. We have banter, we have chemistry, we have little, jibes at one another that you can only jibe that way at someone that you're secretly lusting after. But then, as always, something has to happen. But after the death of her mother and the disappearance of her older brother Forrest, who joined Enver, one of the gods' forces 5 months previously, Iris hops over to the Gazette's rival, the ink-ridden Tribune. And so Iris sets off on her journey as she goes to the front to become a war correspondent. And we've missed something really big here, the linchpin of this entire novel, that there are two magical typewriters and a wardrobe and some letters going back and forth. What's up with that? Who can say? Yes, these typewriters belong to Iris and Roman, but Iris doesn't know that she is secretly writing to Roman. But through these letters, which gradually develop into love letters, Roman and Iris's characters are delivered to the reader, fully formed, and of course, tension mounts because Iris has no clue it's actually her rival who she's bearing her soul to. Yeah. It's so good. Key point here is that Roman does know. And he knows that he is falling in love with Iris E. Winnow. And so he just, makes a very non-reckless decision to follow her to the battlefront, as you do.
As one does. I mean,
as you
do. I would. It seems like a completely reasonable
decision. Life choices.
He's 20. Yeah. Oh, it's so sweet. All right. I'm so excited to dive in. So why don't you start us off, Ailsa, and let us know, what are some of the things that you love that you pulled out of Divine Rivals?
Yeah, so I think, KJ, you and I were joking around when we were reading this book in our group chat. Is it a group chat if it's only 2 people, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Membership and do it.
Yeah. So we were joking around that this book is basically You've Got Mail, light, sweet, happy romance. You're just swooning over the romance, crossed with atonement, brutal. Leave you destroyed on the floor. And I feel like that's one of the things that I just really loved about this book, and the tension between there's just this really sweet, tender first love unfolding on the page, and who doesn't love old-fashioned love letters, who doesn't love a mysterious romantic person, and then the reader knowing more than one of the characters, always so enticing. But then also all of this tension that we've got, because we're going to war, and this is not
Mhm.
just any old war. We're going to a war where the gods are involved, so you know that the stakes are going to be epic.
Mhm. Yeah, we don't see a lot of those huge stakes in the fir like, we have read, Ruthless Vows, which we'll be doing next, so stay tuned. Again, subscribe, like, comment, all that stuff. But the stakes, I feel like in Divine Rivals, Ross really narrowed in on these 2 characters, and this is one of the things that I pulled out, and I think that, like, this is one of the things we were, like, texting at 1 a.m. or something like that because we have priorities. Is that this backdrop that she set Roman and Iris against feels almost like it's blurred, right? There is enough there. The world is built enough for us to believe what's happening. We don't get a lot of the gods. We don't really get a lot of a feel of Oath. It's the capital city of the I can't remember what the region is called.
Is it just like central region, I think?
I don't know. She kept it
Or
really
east region?
simple.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
very simple.
It was very simple, but everything like, there's enough there. The magic system isn't even really fleshed out. We don't really know how it works, but again, we don't care because we have 2 magical typewriters and these 2 kids who are falling in love. So we were really able to focus in on Roman and Iris as they go to the front, and we get this atonement feel, right? That the
Mm,
novel Atonement. They're not atoning for anything. They did nothing wrong. Like, they're just they're
that's
actually
perfect.
they're, like, so good people. They're such good people. They're way better than I could ever be.
Only good things should happen to them, Rebecca Ross.
Yes, we have a bone to pick with you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like it's totally true. Like, and that's another one of the things that I loved about this book, that we're seeing the war and like this very epic war, but from a human's perspective. So within the course of this book, we go into the trenches with Iris and Roman when they're sent to
literally,
the lines. Yeah,
literally.
we go into a field hospital where we see the soldiers who are asking Iris to send letters home to their loved ones because they haven't been able to get letters home. Like, it's the scale of this is kept so human and so intimate that I guess, yeah, the stakes become really high, but not because we're in, some epic Lord of the Rings like staged battle on the field. Like, it's much more about the people and how much we care about them.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of thinking, I always have shower thoughts. I'm pretty sure everybody else has shower thoughts too. So as soon as you get out of the shower, you're like, okay, I need to write this down like, right away. But there was sort of this feel that I was getting this really zeroed in sense, like what was that movie? Dunkirk, I think it was.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Right? Like I know that there's a
Oh wait,
cast of
are you thinking
characters.
of 1917? No, never mind. Carry
No,
on. Say what
I
you're
think it, yeah, 1917 was really good too, but Dunkirk, which is a story I can't remember what the director's name is, but which is a story set in World War II, I believe, and it's about basically the capture of Dunkirk. The anyways, that's the history that I know right now off the top of my
saying.
head. But what it is a whole bunch of different characters, but you see them so intimately. Like you have this sort of, again, kind of blurred, and I'm talking metaphorically blurred background, but you are so into these characters as, the story ends up weaving them all together, right? And that's kind of the feel that I got with Iris and Romans, that we are focused solely on them and these beautiful, intimate letters that they're writing to each other. And we see they're bearing their souls in these letters, and we really get to know them through these letters
Mm,
against this backdrop that feels impossible, but
yeah.
it's not overdone, right? Like she really keeps us separated from it so that we can just sort of like luxuriate in this romance. Because I mean, who doesn't want to be 19 and 20 and in love and all that? Like,
Mhm.
please,
Yeah.
you
So
know?
speaking of the romance, like I had this is my interpretation of Roman's character. So like very early on, so one of the things we know about Iris and Roman is that Iris is from a more working class background. Her mom was a server in a
Mhm.
cafe, but has since been let go, has a problem with alcohol. She went to like a not great school. She didn't go to university, all of these things. Whereas Roman comes from one of the wealthiest and not
Mm.
quite the most elite, but like getting their families in oath. He's had a very expensive education, very, very fancy. So kind of different worlds, right?
Mhm.
And so for me, I was like, oh, he's Mr. Darcy, right? Like he's so far above her. And we have this moment early on in the book where Iris overhears him saying to one of the other employees at the Gazette, like, he's not worried about this, like, slum rat. He doesn't use those words because he's perfect, but, you know, he's kind of
But you
saying,
know he's thinking though.
yeah. He says, like, oh, I'm not worried about her. She only went to, like, such and such school. Like, I've still got this, like, in the bag. So, like, this very, like, snooty, crusty, like, haughty manner. And you're like, wow, okay, like, are we gonna like this guy? But then
Yeah.
we get to know him, and we get to see, like, the tender, romantic
Mhm.
beneath that crusty surface, which, of course, exists in Mr. Darcy as well. But what we get in this book that we don't get in Pride and Prejudice, and, you know, no shade on Jane Austen.
But this
Like,
is how you could do it better.
yes, sort out Jane Austen. Because we get Roman as a point of view character, we go so much deeper into understanding him and who he is and his motivations and what's been holding him back. And it's just catnip. Like, I love
Oh
nothing
yeah.
more than like a
Just rub
wounded
it all
boy.
over me.
Yeah, exactly. So we just get so much more of Roman,
Yeah.
and we get, you know, all of that hurt, all of that pain, all of that history, and we get it from his voice.
Mhm.
Um, and just that's part of the beauty of the letters as well. Like, so this book is told in the third person, but we have the first person voices of these characters through their letters, and just swoon.
One of the most beautiful scenes, and to go exactly to what you're saying about Roman, and that deep down, and it's actually not that deep, like it's a huge part of Roman is actually this benevolent, sweet, romantic guy who's, you know, been raised in this, yeah, upper crust and privileged world. And like his father is also doing some shady stuff too. Like we know that there's, yeah, he's it's not a great family. Let's just put it at that. But when Iris finds out that her mother died, and she died very tragically, like everything about her mother was very tragic. And it was also one of the plot points to push Iris forward into joining the Ingrid and Tribune. It's there. And going to the front was the death of her mother. But how Iris, well, how Ross actually writes Iris's sort of this numbed shock over her mother's death was so well done. You are both there with Iris, immediately with her. You're in her feelings while her feelings are completely numbed out. And then we see Roman knows what's happened. She hasn't told anybody at her job at the Oath Gazette that her mother has just passed away. The only thing she does is basically like take off from work, and she leaves her trench coat behind. Now, her trench coat is actually Forrest's trench coat, and Forrest is her older brother. I think he's 5 years older than her.
I
And
think you're right.
yeah, and you know that they have a very close relationship. And before he went off to the front, he gave her his trench coat. And it's like basically like swallows her up, and she belts it tightly, and it's kind of like frayed and tattered, but it is her armor. I mean, that's another thing that she talks about a lot in the novel. But she leaves the trench coat behind. And Roman knows something is going on because he's also been conversing, corresponding with her with these letters. So he arrives at her apartment with this trench coat, and he sees her and he knows, but she still doesn't tell him what's happened. But he hands her this trench coat, like, I will look after you. I know one day you will be able to take this armor off and I'll be there for you. But in the meantime, here is your protective self, what you need right now.
Mm,
And it's such a still moment that she writes. There's not a lot going on, but it's so breathtaking. It's so human. And it's again, it's all written because of these letters, this correspondence that they have together. And it's just, oh God, I die every time. I die.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then there's like the inbuilt tension, right? Of so they have this moving moment, and like we know how Roman feels about Iris. She doesn't at this point. And we know that Roman is the person she's been corresponding to. So they have this like moment in person where like Iris is numb and is not going to tell him, like, this is her rival. Why is she going to open up to him? Right. And then I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure, like, very soon afterwards, she goes and writes a letter to her mystery pen pal and, like,
Mm-hmm.
posts it through the wardrobe. Right. So even when she's turning away from Roman, she's turning towards him. Like, it's just lovely symmetry. And, ah,
There's so much symmetry actually, and that's something that like I really noticed in the second novel. And we're not talking about Ruthless Files today, but there are so many mirrors, so much symmetry that happens between the letter writing Iris and Roman, Enva and Dacra, who are the two main gods who are at war with each other, which we don't know really anything about in the first novel. And quite frankly, I didn't really care because I just wanted Roman and Iris. Like just give me them. I'm good. You know? What like in my own world, like we're both writers and I've written for news outlets, I've written essays, things like that. And one thing that I really noticed that makes Divine Rivals relevant to me is the fact that there's so much emphasis on a war correspondent and human stories, both through the written letters as well as through Roman and Iris's, their occupation, their job is, and they focus on the human stories that are unfolding at the front. And I feel like there's like, I'm not going to go into what is happening in the world today because this is why we read fantasy. But also, fantasy can kind of give us a new perspective on what is happening in our world today. And what we see right now is all these human stories are getting lost because of how we are receiving our news, right?
mm,
Our reporters, our journalists, things like that. Like some of the news outlets are actually closing down now because everybody is shifting to social media, and it is only social media through which we're getting our news. So I mean, you have, what is it, 140 characters on X, formerly known as Twitter. Instagram, you can do what, 3 minute reels max on Instagram. You don't really get in-depth human stories that way that we used to. So I think that there's an added level of both romanticism there, but the human element that we are really missing today.
as you say, KJ, like this whole book is a love letter to writing itself and like the importance of um, storytelling. I'm thinking in particular about when Iris is asking Roman for some of the myths about the gods, right?
Mm,
And we get this suggestion that maybe that these myths aren't so available
mm,
um, and aren't so easy to find, and but Roman has access to an unfinished myth that tells the story of Enver and Daka, and that gives us some insight into what happened between these two gods. And like again, like there's just this like maybe contemporary resonance. So we have these not impartial, we have these partial myths.
mm-hmm,
So we have them trying to understand the truth of what happened between the gods, trying to understand the reality of their world, and the idea that those pages have been ripped out of books, these stories have been lost, and how much danger that creates in this world to not know the stories of the gods, to not know the lore. And again, not to like stretch the point too far, but that has some resonance in
mm-hmm,
our current climate, right, where we have uncertainty about what news is reliable and what isn't, because we've lost these like trusted
yeah.
authorities to give us our news. So there's definitely yeah, some kind of undercurrent of stories
Yeah.
are really important and let's not let people take them away from us kind of running.
Yeah. Yeah, and like even more to that point is the human stories. It's not necessarily like the who, what, where, when, why, the W5, right, of news and reporting. It is tell it in the voice of the people who are actually there,
Mm,
right? And that's like we don't really have that now. Like we do have it, but it's actually being taken up, like that mantle is being taken up by people who actually live in those circumstances through social media. So
mm,
we're hearing from them directly, but we're not getting this in our news sources. Like I'm just thinking like here in Canada, a lot of our news sources are actually, we can't access them on the Meta social media as well as Google. They're all banned from those in Canada here, Canada News. So in order to get this news, we have to go out looking for it. So the only way we do get it is from content creators. right?
Mm,
But that also, runs a little bit of a dangerous situation because you get a very biased perspective or something that may be untrue,
mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
I think like there's so much, and this is one of the reasons why I love fantasy so much is you can tell so much using these playgrounds with no limits, right?
Mm,
You can tell a story about two gods fighting. We don't really entirely know why they're fighting. We just know that there's some, divine rivalry between them. Which is also mirrored in Iris and Roman. I will stop while I'm
never stop. Never stop.
never stop, never stop. But anyways, I don't even remember where I was going with this, but I know it's important.
Yeah, and I guess that's the question. Well, that sparked a question for me, right? Like, as we're talking, when you're reading fantasy, and like one definition of fantasy is to do with like something alluring, right? Something we
Mhm.
want to get into. But like in some ways, like this world, as you said, is so romanticized, right? Like, and it has like a very much like World War I, World War II, like
Mhm.
mid-century vibe, like the trench coats and like the like I don't know, it has that kind of like classic silver screen feel to
Yeah.
it in some ways. So there's that kind of like romanticism to it. So like, would we rather be in the world of divine rivals? Would we love to like step through the page into this world? Like, would it solve some of the problems we have in our own world to be in this world? But then also, do we want to be trapped in the middle of a war between gods? You know, you
Yeah.
win some, you lose some. But
You win some, you lose some. Yeah,
yeah,
but there's like what you're saying here too is that there's so much that can be said between these
yeah,
pages. And like we don't even know if was what Ross was trying to get. We don't know if there was subtext. Maybe she was like magical typewriters, two young kids sent to the front, like perfect. Yes, please wrap it up with a bow. Take my money, right? She may not have even meant anything, but this is the beauty of fantasy is that there's so much you can take from it as a reader and you can contextualize it into your own life and what you're seeing and read this in 20 years and you may see something else, something different that will help you understand the world that is happening today or in 20
Mhm,
years. You know what I'm talking
mhm.
about? I feel like I'm getting into a time paradox here.
Enter the black hole. Yeah.
Time travel.
But yeah, no, you're completely right. Like this is, and we are here for nothing if not to go way into the weeds, reading way too deeply, more than the author may have ever imagined. That is our reason for being here, because that's part of the joy of like falling into a book is
Mhm.
being able to like rabbit hole down as many nuances, and a good book will give you lots of different opportunities to find those rabbit holes and see where they lead you, see where they make your mind wander to, right? Okay, after our ramble fest, we're going to read a couple of our favorite passages, and I think we're actually both reading from the letters, which goes to tell you how amazing these letters are. This I'm going to read first. This is from page 73 in the hardback edition. And this is Iris writing to Roman. I think we all wear armor. I think those who don't are fools, risking the pain of being wounded by the sharp edges of the world over and over again. But if I've learned anything from those fools, is that to be vulnerable is a strength most of us fear. It takes courage to let down your armor, to welcome people to see you as you are. Sometimes I feel the same as you. I can't risk having people behold me as I truly am. But there's a small voice in the back of my mind, a voice that tells me, you will miss so much by being so guarded. Perhaps it begins with one person, someone you trust. You remove a piece of armor for them. You let the light stream in, even if it makes you wince. Perhaps that is how you learn to be soft yet strong, even in fear and uncertainty. One person, one piece of steel.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. I died. I mean, as a writer, I died a little too because I'm like, "Oh, I want to write like that."
Yes, this will be a
Like
recurring theme,
Roz.
I think.
Yeah, like Rebecca, can you please teach me? I love you. Yeah, I love that. I think it was close around the same time that she started letting go of Forrest's trench coat. Like she wasn't wearing it because she was actually donning the armor of the war correspondent, the Ink Ridden Tribune. I think it was like close to that time where she changed her armor. So she became somebody more receptive to these stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Yeah,
know, metaphor, who knows? But yes, so
definitely
beautiful.
a metaphor.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the whole thing is like a metaphor. Again, mine is a love letter, and it is like the love letter. It's like one of the Shakespeare love letters, I swear. It's on page 250, the hardback version. And it is a letter from C, who is actually, that's the middle, Roman's middle initial, to Iris. I want to know everything about you, Iris. I want to know your hopes and your dreams. I want to know what irritates you and what makes you smile and what makes you laugh and what you long for most in this world. But perhaps even more than that, I want to know who I want you to know who I am. If you could see me right now as I type this, you would smile. No, you'd probably laugh to see how badly my hands are shaking because I want to get this right. I've wanted to get it right for weeks now, but the truth is I don't know how and I'm worried what you might think. It's odd how quickly life can change, isn't it? How one little thing, like typing a letter, can open a door you never saw, a transcendent connection, a divine threshold. But if there's anything I can, which is crossed out, should say in this moment, when my heart is beating wildly in my chest, and I would beg you to come and tame it, is this: your letters have been a light for me to follow. Your words, a sublime feast that fed me on days when I was starving. I love you, Iris. And I want you to see me. I want you to know me through the smoke and the firelight and kilometers that once dwelled between us. Do you see me? See.
And like the perfect thing about that letter is, of course, it includes all the clues for
Mhm.
Iris. Like, let's
To
be real,
find out.
it's not like very subtle clues, but
No.
he's doing what he needs to do to like finally unmask himself and
Yeah.
reveal who he is. So this is the letter that provides Iris with the ability to merge C and Roman together and
Yeah.
the same person.
It's the word sublime, I think. And like he's already gone to the front with Iris and he pops his head out of the window of the house that they're staying at. And he's like, what's another word for? I can't remember what, but one of the ones that they stuck on was sublime. And because nobody uses that word.
Yeah, and I think like another one in that letter is transcendent, and that's maybe
Mm.
what Atty, who is the plucky reporter friend of Iris,
Mm.
offers up. So yeah,
I
it's
just
just so
love
great.
letters.
And like
I
there's
love letters.
obviously, because of course there's a delay between when Roman sends this letter and when Iris gets to read it, which is just perfect also.
So, having said that, having read all that, can we give this a rating? This book, Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Can we give it a rating?
I'm like, who's gonna go first?
So, we have a rating scale, normal rating scale of 1 to 5 stars. So, one being did not finish, would not recommend. I'm pretty sure there are not a lot of books that we're actually going to rate a 1 star, all the way up to number 5, which is everything was amazing, can't stop talking about, still crushed weeks later, need our comfort jammies and Kleenex and or chocolate, also can offer wider commentary about some issue we deal with now. Please help me find myself. I will never be the same. Not to be dramatic.
I went out on a limb on Instagram and I said, have I found my favorite book of 2024 already? So I think on that basis, I have to give this a 5. Like, that's where I'm going to set the bar. I'm going to set this with a 5. Like, I really, really did love it. I really am still thinking about it weeks later. It like destroyed me in the best possible way. It made me super hyped to like immediately pick up the next book. More to talk about next
More to talk
time.
about later.
So yeah, I think for me it's a 5. I think it really is.
I agree, actually. Like this, Roman and Iris live rent free in my head now. Their romance is just, and there's so much bittersweetness to it that I feel like my guts are being scooped out in like the best and worst possible way all the time. And Roman is just, he is just such a treasure. He really is a treasure. But on top of that, the writing is stellar. She
Yeah.
can, her craft is just so beautiful. I mean, some of those love letters, not even in my wildest dreams. So
Mm-hmm.
good. And again, like we've talked about in this, episode, there's so much that can be taken away from this, or you can just sit and have a wonderful read and text your BFF swoony hearts and things like that.
Speaking of the letters and how good she is at writing love letters, did you catch in the acknowledgements that she talks about how her and her now husband wrote each other love letters when they were at college? Like,
No.
like
I didn't
I
read the acknowledgments, and
I
I
am not
always do.
somebody who was into real person fic, but let's just say I'm loving that. I love that
Mm.
detail. I love knowing that.
So if you also love Divine Rivals, we have a couple of recommendations. Some of them just kind of like because we feel like you would like it, but there's nothing really like comp like about it, but we loved it anyway. So why don't you start us off with a couple of recommendations there?
Okay, so the first one I'm going to recommend to you is Witchmark, the Witchmark series by C.L. Polk. This is another romance, fantasy romance. Decide on your order of preference.
Nomenclature. Yeah.
So, yeah, it has very similar World War One vibes. There's been a big war. Our main character has come back from the war with all kinds of trauma, and then he has to fit back into the society, into the world from which he was trying to escape originally by going to war. And then, hijinks ensue as they must. But very, very similar vibes. It's a male romance, so
Mhm.
also something to enjoy if that's something that you like. And also, actually, my other recommendation, A Marvelous Light trilogy, is also queer fantasy romance.
Nice.
So, sensing a theme here.
Yeah.
Um, but that's from Freya Mask. And again, I think it's just that it's that. So that one has more of like an Edwardian London kind of vibe. And it's an alternate version of London where the presence of magic is well known and established. There are magical families, and then there's also the ordinary world and kind of like a government department that deals with the interaction between the ordinary world and the magical world. It has that like intimacy of being set in the kind of, it's not in like the big epic fantasy, but
Mhm.
it's in like the small human details that really matter, and the love story unfolding against this bigger backdrop. So those are
Yeah.
my two ones.
Nice, nice. I have one which people may disagree with. I know that this series, actually, it's a trilogy, has like it's polarized some people, but I actually really love it. Is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. It is also YA. Now, I don't actually feel like the Divine Rivals should be categorized as YA. It is categorized as YA, but I mean that's for another episode. My beef about YA. But The Cruel Prince has a phenomenal enemies to lovers trope in it, and while the main characters in The Cruel Prince are so gray, they are so morally gray, which is what I really love about it. We also do get this backdrop of hostility, of political intrigue, and it's not a huge world she's got, but we can very much focus in on all the bad decisions these characters make, Prince Cardin and Jude Duarte. I love The Cruel Prince. Don't come at me. Some people really don't like it, but that's fine. The second one, actually, I just thought of now because I finished it reading it at like 2 a.m. last night. I could not sleep, probably because of this book, is One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. Now, I'm not sure if I can actually sort of concisely sum it up right now because I'm still kind of processing it, but it's kind of set in a Victorian-esque setting, but also like witch burning, the witch hunting kind of feel to it, where the people who are infected with magic are basically like killed because the magic is bad. But there is another system of magic in the world through these cards. It's almost like tarot cards kind of thing. And then you control these cards, but eventually the magic ends up controlling you. So in this one, we also have an enemies to lovers. We have this political intrigue. We've got a magic system that is more defined than in Divine Rivals, but it is just as unique. It's a really unique magic system, and the writing is just chef's kiss. It's so good. Like
Yeah.
honestly, yeah,
And
I
KJ has
recommend that.
been me for days to
Yeah,
pick this up.
like
It
I
is
am
on
going.
my library.
Yeah. I am going today to go buy the second one. I just like, I can't. I
Okay,
can't.
okay.
Everything needs to be put down until I read the second.
Nice. I
So
love it
good.
when I have that
Yeah.
feeling about a book.
Mm.
It's so good.
Yeah. I don't like staying up till 2 a.m., but
Well,
I'm
yeah.
gonna I'm gonna bill my melatonin to Rachel Gillick. Thanks. Girl.
Okay, before we wrap up,
Yeah.
KJ, do you want to hear my unhinged theory about this book?
Why didn't you open with that?
Okay, this is definitely in the realm of I'm thinking way too much about this. But there are so many nature names in this book. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
Iris, her mum is Asta, her grandmother was Daisy, her brother is Forest.
Yeah.
The typewriters that they write on, the alouette, that is a lark in French. There's a character called Prairie who we meet briefly in the book. Kit is a baby fox.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lieutenant lark. There is Thea Atwood, Thea, goddess of the light. Atwood, dwelling by the wood. Like, are you catching my drift?
You stayed up all night thinking about this, didn't you?
Turning it over and over in my mind. I'm like, well, I don't know what to make of this. Like, maybe Rebecca Ross just really loves nature names. Maybe she's just like really into them. Cool. Here's what I was thinking.
Yes.
This is a very technologically advanced world. This is not your medieval fantasy. This is not like, sword and sandals. This is a world in which, there are vehicles, there are trains, there is gas, there is bombing, there are rifles. Like it's technologically advanced. They've had the industrial age, their equivalent of.
Yeah.
And so what I wonder is that do these nature names signal some kind of message about needing to reconnect to nature, needing to get back to, to turn away from this like mechanization of war? And then, like a lot of the time we see like the idyllic, so like when they're near the front and they're in Marisol, which how did we not talk about Marisol? But anyway, when they're in Marisol's bed and breakfast, like the nature is like such a healing balm. When Iris is in her darkest moments, she thinks about like just escaping to the country, leaving Oath behind. Absolutely, this is a stretch, and I haven't fleshed this out at all. But this is my theory that like I started like Googling this, and I was like, why is no one talking about this?
Oh,
And
yes.
because there's nothing there. But
Awesome. I love it. And like, I mean, that speaks to a lot of what we were talking about in the episode is that, with these human stories, these human connection, we strip away all of the superfluous details that we have today, everything else that is getting in the way of us actually talking to one another,
right.
face to face, even if it's through Zoom, whatever the case may be, but getting these real human stories and listening past 140 characters or a 3-minute reel. And I'm not, no shade to social media because it has saved people's lives. Right. But we're also missing something in learning about other people's lives that, in Divine Rivals that we are getting. And, Iris literally is typing up letters of these, soldiers at the front and sending them, getting them to their families. Like she is the medium through which human stories are being told, but also she and Roman are telling their own human stories together and they're getting documented. The letters are never destroyed.
Yes.
Right. So there will always be that record of such deep human connection. Like, oh my God.
Okay, I have one final question for you.
Okay.
I told you I was holding some stuff back for this
Oh my God,
conversation.
this is so good.
Okay. You are in your bedroom at night, you have your jammies on, and suddenly a letter comes from under your wardrobe. KJ, are you responding to that letter?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have no sense of self-preservation. Question where it came from? No.
Because I'm like, okay, if I was in Iris's position or Roman's position more accurately, and I get this letter from my wardrobe, am I calling my therapist? Am I like, I finally lost it. I've gone off the deep end. Am I calling the police? Like this is why I am not the heroine in a romance novel, because I was like, I don't think I would reply. I think I would like think of some way of like catfishing me.
I think you would probably be primed if you were in their world that maybe there's
Sure.
something magical going on, but I get, like I said, I have no common sense. There's just sense is not common with me. I would respond. I would start a romance with the paper people.
I mean, this is why you're going to get to go and be in a romance novel. When you become like a fictional character, you can be in a romance novel, and I'll be in like some kind of murder mystery hellscape. So, you know.
I mean, I think we would pair off pretty well, though. Like, put it together. I mean, not as romancing because you're my BFF. I love you, but not in that way. But like, we would be great in a novel together. There's me,
Yes.
the reckless one, running off. Yes, I'll respond to this mysterious letter that just got dumped on my floor. And you're like,
Hang on a minute.
I have questions.
Yeah. There's got to be the one who asks questions. Okay,
Yes.
I feel better about myself now.
Yes, just stay true to you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. So excited to talk about Ruthless Vows next time, and we have thoughts. So make sure you hit the subscribe, like, comment, share with your friends. Follow us on Instagram at handle SFF_podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.